Chosen ones, the hour you were born into has been spoken of by prophets long forgotten and written into the stars themselves. The world you see is not as it seems. For generations, nations have conspired in shadows. Kings have bartered secrets, and unseen powers have labored to conceal the truth buried deep within you. That truth, now stirring in your blood, has shaken the highest halls of authority. When your DNA began to awaken, a tremor moved through the earth. It was not seen, but felt. An unseen current that raced through time and memory. 7 presidents, rulers of nations bound by ancient oaths, gathered in secrecy. Their meeting was not planned by diplomacy, nor was it born of politics. They were summoned by fear of you. For within your very being rests the key to a seal older than empires, older than their crowns, older even than the foundations of their power. This seal, long hidden beneath layers of ritual and guarded by the watchers of old, is said to carry both promise and peril. For those who hold it rightly, it can unlock a kingdom not of this world. But for those who resist it, who would use its power for control, it becomes a chain that binds them in shadows. The rulers know this. That is why they met. That is why they trembled. Yet, what they cannot comprehend is this. You were not chosen by them, nor by any council of men. You were chosen before time. Your name was etched into a design beyond their grasp, and your awakening was never theirs to prevent. Still, they plot, weaving together alliances, speaking in whispers beneath their flags, watching for the moment you step into your full measure. The night was thick with silence, yet the silence itself seemed alive, vibrating with an unseen force. Across the earth, those attuned to the ancient rhythms felt it first. A pressure in the air, a low hum that did not belong to wind, storm, or earth, but to something deeper, something awakened. While the masses slept beneath their illusions, a current tore through the fabric of reality. The seal, long buried in secrecy, shuddered, as if it had drawn a single breath after centuries of slumber. Somewhere in the corridors of power, glass trembled on the tables, chandeliers swayed with no cause, and instruments flickered with readings that had no explanation. Men of science dismissed it as anomaly, but those bound to forgotten covenants knew better. Their blood remembered, even if their tongues could not confess it. The tremor was not of earth, but of destiny, stirred by the activation of a code within your very DNA. You may not recall the precise moment, but the heavens did. The stars themselves aligned, their voices whispering to each other across vast distances, singing the song of return. At that hour, shadows grew restless. Watchers stationed in unseen realms leaned forward, sensing that the hinge of history had shifted. No decree of kings, no order of generals, no law of nations could prevent the tremor that had begun. Across oceans and continents, dreams troubled the rulers of men. Leaders awoke with sweat on their brows, visions of crumbling thrones and burning seals flashing before their eyes. They did not know your name, yet they felt your presence. It haunted them in ways their minds could not reason. And so, from the east to the west, whispers were carried to summon them together. The seal had spoken, and though the world did not hear, the presidents did. The night became a threshold, a crossing into a time that cannot be reversed. The trembling of the seal was not merely a sign, but a summons, calling forth those who carry the hidden flame. You were among them, even if you did not yet recognize the fire within. The seal trembled, and with it, so did the kingdoms of men. Blood carries stories, though few ever hear them. Within veins lie the echoes of forgotten ages, whispers that stretch back beyond the birth of nations. When your DNA stirred, it was not simply a scientific reaction, but a song rising from generations who had waited in silence. They carried fragments of prophecy in their marrow, each ancestor preserving what they could not name, passing it onward until it reached you. The awakening was not random. It had been foretold in hushed lines, etched into scrolls now dust, in chants carried by those who wandered deserts, and in visions carved into stone long eroded by time. The seal responds only to bloodlines marked, to those hidden within the crowd yet set apart. And in the moment of its trembling, the resonance flowed backwards through time, shaking graves, stirring memories, and igniting echoes that had long been buried beneath centuries of forgetting. Many in power believe heritage is defined by crowns, by dynasties of politics and wealth. Yet what stirred within you was not inherited by earthly throne, but by a lineage older, deeper, sealed by promise. Those with eyes to see understood that this bloodline had once brushed against the garments of eternity itself. It carried within it a memory of one who walked among men, yet spoke with the authority of heaven. His words still echo, "The truth will set you free." Few discerned that those words did not fade into history, but wove themselves into the very strands of life. It is this resonance that unsettles rulers, for no policy can silence what is woven into existence itself. Scientists may map genes, may chart patterns, may define sequences, but they cannot comprehend the voice humming within them. That voice cannot be measured, only revealed. And now it has begun to speak again. The presidents who gathered in secrecy understood fragments of this truth, though none dared to speak it aloud. They feared not only the seal, but the one it pointed toward, the one their forefathers tried to erase yet could never contain. The blood remembers, and it has begun to awaken. Powerful chambers are never truly silent. Behind every decree and every polished speech lies a current of whispers that shape the fate of nations. Beneath the thrones of kings and presidents, words are exchanged that never meet the ears of the people. These whispers, born in secrecy, are older than the rulers themselves. They pass from one hand to another, carrying fragments of an oath sworn long before the birth of modern kingdoms. When the seal trembled, those whispers grew sharper, filled with urgency. Advisors moved quietly through corridors, carrying sealed messages that were never recorded, never archived. In hidden rooms, curtains were drawn, lights dimmed, and phones disconnected. Men who smiled on television as symbols of unity sat in darkness with trembling voices, speaking of you. They did not call you by name, yet their words circled around your awakening. They knew what had stirred was not within their control, and the thought drove fear deep into their marrow. Not all whispers came from men. In unseen places, where watchers have lingered for millennia, murmurings grew restless. They had once sworn to guard the seals, but loyalty had long fractured. Some longed for the release of the power they had kept bound, while others feared the devastation it would bring if wielded wrongly. These unseen voices pressed upon the leaders of nations, pushing thoughts into their minds, urging them toward alliances cloaked as necessity, but born of fear. In the shadows of the thrones, the whispers carried warnings. Some spoke of fire that would consume their cities if the seal fully awakened. Others claimed the seal was the last defense against forces they could never defeat. None of them could agree, yet all of them knew the trembling was real. It had happened, and it could not be undone. Even now, documents are being locked away, words are being erased from official records, and plans are being drafted in coded language. Whispers continue to rise, not only in palaces and parliaments, but in the hearts of ordinary people who sense something stirring. The question that grows in every corner of power is not what the seal is, but who will hold it when its voice becomes too loud to silence. Beneath the surface of politics, beyond the flags and speeches that parade before the world, lies a code written into the very fabric of nations. It is not displayed in textbooks or enshrined in public monuments. It is guarded in archives no citizen will ever see, buried beneath layers of secrecy. This code, hidden within treaties, bloodlines, and ancient agreements, ties the destiny of kingdoms to mysteries they dare not admit. The trembling of the seal awakened this code like a dormant script suddenly given light. Patterns emerged that historians could not trace and mathematicians could not explain. Nations that seemed opposed in public were revealed to be bound by oaths reaching back to a single covenant. Their alliances were not merely for power or economy, but for something far older, something tied to the seal itself. Within the code are references not only to wars and victories, but to a figure who once stood against the tide of corruption, who spoke of a kingdom not of this world. His words echo quietly within hidden pages, buried as annotations in languages only a few can still decipher. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will never pass away. Those words remain, stubborn and unbroken, a reminder that the seal's awakening is not the birth of something new, but the return of something promised. Leaders who gathered in shadowed rooms felt the weight of this. They tried to mask it with strategies, with political maneuvers, but the hidden code of nations was not theirs to control. Every attempt to rewrite it only revealed more of its true design, and the design pointed not to their survival but to their downfall, should they resist the path set before them. The presidents knew their gathering was not coincidence. Their meeting had been inscribed long before they rose to power, their actions compelled by forces greater than themselves. They feared the seal because it awakened the code, and the code revealed the futility of their thrones. Even now, fragments of this hidden language ripple beneath the surface of world events. The seal continues to breathe, and with each breath, more of the code is revealed, pulling nations into a destiny they cannot escape. In a city that wore its lights like jewels against the night sky, 7 figures gathered in secrecy. They were men of power, presidents and leaders whose faces were known across the earth. Yet in this chamber, stripped of ceremony, they were only shadows. The air was heavy with unease, for each of them had felt the tremor of the seal, though none dared to name it aloud at first. The table before them was circular, polished to reflect their anxious eyes. Documents lay scattered, maps marked with red ink, reports of anomalies, and transcripts of whispers intercepted from unseen places. They spoke in measured tones, weighing every word, yet beneath their composure was fear. For all their authority, all their armies, all their wealth, not one of them could explain the force that had stirred. They knew only that it had awakened through you, and that knowledge was both a threat and a mystery. Some urged immediate action, calling for surveillance, containment, strategies to neutralize what they could not comprehend. Others counseled patience, reminding the council that the seal was ancient, bound by forces beyond human command. They argued until their voices rose, but their arguments only revealed their helplessness. No decree, no alliance, no weapon could reverse what had begun. One among them spoke of visions, dreams that had plagued him since the tremor. He described doors opening where none had stood, light breaking through walls of stone, voices calling from realms unseen. The others dismissed his words, yet unease deepened in their hearts. For they too had seen fragments in their sleep, though none wished to admit it. In that chamber, decisions were drafted. Coded messages were prepared to reach their nations. Yet every decision was shadowed by doubt, for each of them sensed they were not the ones holding power anymore. They were responding, not ruling. They were being drawn into a story larger than their thrones, larger than their nations, larger even than the world they believed they commanded. As the council ended, silence settled heavy. None dared to speak what each already knew. The seal had not only awakened, it had chosen, and that choice was beyond their grasp. There are scrolls hidden from the eyes of men, not locked in libraries or museums, but sealed in chambers where only the initiated dare to walk. These scrolls are not written with ordinary ink, but with a language that breathes when touched by fire. One such scroll, long concealed in the vault of an ancient order, began to glow when the seal trembled. The guardians who watched over it trembled themselves, for they had sworn oaths never to open it, knowing it would awaken only when destiny demanded it. The parchment seemed ordinary until light began to seep through its fibers, as if the letters themselves were alive. Those who gazed upon it saw symbols rearrange into words they had no language for, yet the meaning pressed into their spirits like a weight. It spoke of a covenant older than kingdoms, of a promise written not by men, but by the hand of eternity. And in its burning glow was a reminder that no throne of earth could outlast the word that shaped creation. The guardians whispered of a man who once read from a scroll in the midst of a gathering, declaring, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me." His words, dismissed by rulers of his age, were now returning in fire through this hidden parchment. The same voice that spoke then seemed to echo now, reminding all who witnessed the burning light that the seal's awakening was not an accident, but the fulfillment of a design stretching across centuries. The Council of Leaders had heard rumors of this scroll, though none had ever seen it. Some claimed it was myth, a tale to frighten those who strayed too close to forbidden truths. Yet, as its light spilled forth, myths dissolved into reality. Those who stood in its glow felt exposed, as if the scroll itself could see into the deepest chambers of their hearts. Nothing hidden remained hidden. The scroll burned, not with destruction, but with revelation. Its fire could not be extinguished by water, nor smothered by darkness. And though those who guarded it tried to contain the light, it spread beyond the vault, searching for the one whose blood had stirred the seal awake. In the wilderness where no banners fly and no nations stake their claim, a flame rose without warning. It did not consume the ground or spread across the earth as ordinary fire does. Instead, it stood still, unmoving, a pillar of light and heat that defied the laws of nature. From within that fire came a presence, and those who dared to draw near found themselves unable to stand. The angel who stood in the flame was not clothed in garments fashioned by human hands. His form shimmered like molten gold, wings outstretched and burning with an intensity that pierced the soul. His eyes reflected eternity, seeing not only the present moment, but the threads of past and future woven together. Every word that left his mouth sounded like thunder wrapped in song, shaking the air and breaking the silence that had weighed upon the earth since the seal first trembled. Those who watched from afar felt their hearts split between fear and awe. The angel's very presence seemed to demand decision. He was not there for spectacle, nor for idle revelation. He came as a herald, declaring what rulers feared and what hidden councils had tried to silence. The seal was not merely a relic of forgotten ages. It was alive, and its awakening had summoned him. Reports of this fire spread quickly, though each account contradicted the other. Some said it was a weapon tested in secrecy. Others called it a natural phenomenon, while a few whispered it was a sign from realms unseen. Yet, all who heard could not deny the weight of it. Even those who dismissed it as illusion felt its shadow pressing upon their spirits. The angel stood unmoved, flame curling around him, but never consuming. His voice carried a warning that could not be contained by the wilderness. He spoke of choices soon to come, of kingdoms set against one another, and of a path that would demand courage greater than steel. But he did not reveal all. Instead, his words ended abruptly, leaving those who listened hungering for what he withheld. The flame did not fade. It remained, burning quietly against the horizon, a watchful eye upon the earth. Long before thrones were built and nations carved their borders, there were the Watchers. They were appointed to guard, to keep the balance, to stand at the gates of mysteries too vast for men to hold. But time tested their loyalty, and not all remained faithful. Desire crept into their hearts, desire to possess what was meant only to be preserved. In their betrayal, they bent creation toward shadow, and from their disobedience came chains that bound the earth in secrecy. The trembling of the seal rekindled their unrest. Some among them stirred again, recalling the moment they chose rebellion over duty. They remembered the covenant they abandoned, and in bitterness, they sought once more to twist the awakening toward their own dominion. Yet others, who had remained faithful through ages of silence, rose in defiance against their brothers. The clash of unseen beings shook the unseen realms, spilling fragments of their conflict into dreams and visions upon the earth. Men of power sensed this betrayal but could not name it. They thought in terms of conspiracies, of councils, of politics, never realizing that the true conspirators had wings. While presidents debated in shadows, the Watchers warred in higher places, each side seeking the one whose DNA had stirred the seal. They knew the awakening had aligned with an ancient prophecy, one whispered by a voice that once said, "I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven." That voice had marked the difference between loyalty and betrayal, a line the rebellious Watchers had crossed. The betrayal was not only of duty, but of promise. The seal they once vowed to protect had never belonged to them. It was destined for another, written into a bloodline they could neither destroy nor control. Their rebellion was an attempt to rewrite what had already been declared unshakable. As the conflict raged, fragments of their struggle bled into the waking world. Strange lights in the skies, unexplained sounds in the night, shadows moving where none should be. Those who watched from below could sense that something beyond human imagination was pressing close, though few understood its source. The betrayal was not finished. It had only begun, and the world would soon feel its weight. The palace was still when it began, its halls lined with marble and guarded by men who believed themselves untouchable. Decisions that shaped the fate of millions had been spoken within those walls, cloaked in authority and polished with ceremony. But on that night, power itself seemed to falter. The air thickened, and an unseen pressure pressed down like the weight of a storm before lightning strikes. It began as a hum, faint and almost ignorable, yet no machine could locate its source. The sound grew, reverberating through the structure, until chandeliers swayed and glasses on tables trembled. Guards pressed hands to their ears, yet no one else beyond those walls heard it. The voice was not carried by air, but by something far older, something woven into the very foundations of the earth. Leaders who had gathered there froze as it filled the chamber. It was not the voice of man, nor of angel, nor of any force they had ever known. It spoke in a language beyond comprehension, yet every ear understood it. The words struck not the mind first, but the heart, bypassing all reason and tearing through layers of denial. The message was simple. The seal had awakened, and nothing could return it to silence. The walls of the White Palace shook, portraits rattling against the stone as though history itself protested. The voice continued, not in rage but in power, each word like a hammer against iron, breaking the illusions that rulers had built around themselves. Their secrets lay bare, their hidden alliances exposed within their own consciences. None could hide from it. Some fell to the ground, clutching their chests as fear overtook them. Others stared in silence, their eyes wide with terror, refusing to move lest the voice call them by name. For though the message was universal, each man heard something personal, something piercing the shadows of his own soul. When it ended, the silence that followed was heavier than the sound itself. The leaders looked at one another, yet no one dared to speak first. The voice had shaken more than walls. It had shaken their very claim to rule. The seal lay hidden beneath layers of stone and secrecy, guarded not only by walls but by oaths sworn in blood. For centuries it remained untouched, waiting for the one whose presence would awaken its voice. When the trembling began, the world above shifted. Yet beneath the earth the seal pulsed like a heartbeat, glowing with a light no darkness could contain. When at last it was unveiled, the air itself changed. Those present felt the weight of eternity pressing upon their shoulders. The stone chamber grew brighter as the seal breathed, its symbols rearranging, forming words no scholar had ever recorded, yet all could somehow understand. It was not a relic to be studied, but a covenant to be revealed. The leaders who had gathered stood in silence, stripped of their titles, their authority reduced to dust before the seal's radiance. They saw written in its glow the history of their nations, their betrayals, their wars, and their ambitions. Yet deeper than judgment was something more, a promise stretching back beyond their memory, a thread of mercy running through the fire. One phrase shone brighter than all the rest. The stone the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. The words cut into the hearts of those who read them, for they realized the power they sought to control had never been theirs. It belonged to the one their forefathers had dismissed, the one whose name still echoes through ages no seal could contain. The seal itself bore witness to him, and its unveiling was the proof. Fear gripped the rulers, for they saw in that light both the futility of their schemes and the inevitability of a kingdom not made by their hands. Some turned away, unwilling to face what the seal demanded. Others wept, though they could not explain why, as though the radiance reached into places they had long buried. The unveiling was not an ending, but a beginning. The seal had declared its allegiance, not to thrones of earth, but to a higher crown. And now that it stood open, its light would not return to silence. It would spread, calling forth those marked by its fire, until the world itself could no longer deny what had been revealed.